Welcome to the Building Web 3 podcast. Today I have my good friend. We've got Adam, the CMO of OpenSea here. He's going to be breaking down everything that's going on with OpenSea. Now, if you've been in crypto for a while, I'm sure you know the product. But Adam, for anyone that's unfamiliar with OpenSea, which I don't think would really be in our audience, but I like to make it easy for people. Talk to them about what OpenSea and a little bit of the history.
Yeah, happy to. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here. So, OpenSea, most people would know OpenSea as the world's largest NFT marketplace. And of course, we are the world's largest NFT marketplace. And for anybody that remembers the craze of 2021, when the whole world was talking about NFTs and you wanted to have digital ownership over a variety of things, whether it be, collectibles or PFPs or art or any number of others, OpenSea was essentially the marketplace that you went to almost all of the time to buy, sell, trade those assets. We've evolved a lot since then. And now OpenSea today is a single place where you can come and really trade a variety of different things on chain. And so you can trade major crypto on OpenSea. And so if you want to be trading Ethereum or Solana, if you want to be trading meme coins, if you want to be trading, of course, NFTs, but even evolved forms of NFTs, things like RWAs, tokenized Pokemon cards and the like, then you're going to find all of that on OpenSea. And we've already announced that we're adding things like perpetual futures from Hyperliquid. We've talked a bit about prediction markets. And so OpenSea today is a place where you can come and trade culture. It's a place where you can really take ownership over your crypto and your digital assets in a decentralized way, and a way for you to just have a lot more fun with whatever it is that you're doing on chain.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the NFT marketplace because, NFTs got mentioned on SNL. There was the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs. There was so much crazy stuff that happened.
Sure.
Blur got introduced, all of this kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the history of NFTs and how you guys have evolved into, I would almost classify you guys as the anything store for crypto, like a one-stop shop. You can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, love that positioning. So two thumbs up there. Look, as far as the history of NFTs, so first of all, for anybody that doesn't have a full understanding of exactly what an NFT is, an analogy that I like to use is imagine you walk into a museum and you see this beautiful painting on the wall, and you're told that that painting is worth $1 million, and you say, well, why is that painting worth $1 million? Well, because it's the original. You can prove that it's the original. People care about it and obviously associate it with the artist that created it. And if you went to the gift shop and you wanted to buy a print of that painting, it's not going to be worth $1 million. If you wanted to take a photo of it with your phone, you could do that, but it's not going to be worth $1 million. The reason that the one that's up on the wall is because you truly can prove that it's the original. And up until a few years ago, it was really difficult to do that with digital assets. And so if you created, for example, a piece of digital art, you could right click, copy, paste that. You could post it on your social media feed, put it on a website, email it to people, and you could have millions and millions of copies of that original piece of digital art that would be indiscernible from the one that you created as the artist. And what an NFT does is it enables you to actually track in a very public, transparent, provable way on chain that when you have a digital asset like a piece of digital art, or really could be anything, that is in fact the original. It tracks the history and the movement of that asset. So if you transfer it to somebody else, if they sell it to somebody else, you can always trace it all the way back to the individual that created it. And that provable provenance that comes along with that digital asset, to be able to say that, this was one of 10 pieces of art that this artist created on this particular day in this particular location under these circumstances, allows you to then take real ownership over the original. And there's a lot of implications for that. You can associate it with membership. You can associate it with provenance and, folding back to the original. You can associate it with utility and actual benefits. And there's a variety of ways that can impact different markets, industries, or ways that you need to provably own a digital asset. Now, in 2021, you mentioned that there was this big craze where, you had Jimmy Fallon that, was talking about NFTs on, his show. And you had all these famous people all around the world that, were buying Bored Apes and using them as their profile pictures and their digital identity. And there was this kind of conflation between the real value of NFTs and people using them to candidly just speculate and gamble. And people were buying up these assets in the thought that, well, if there's only 10,000 of these things and the entire world wants one, then that means they're going to be worth more and more money. And people were gambling and speculating on that concept. And so you had this period of time where certain NFTs went from being worth a few dollars to being worth millions of dollars. And people were paying just completely ludicrous amounts of money for very specific NFTs or very specific pieces of digital art, largely in speculation that they would be worth a lot more in a digital future where you have millions or billions of people that are caring more and more about digital identity, caring more and more about what they own digitally. I think what we've seen over the last several years is that some aspects of that still hold true. And the real value of holding assets digitally and being able to provably own things in a digital world, I think still rings very true. And that's why there are a lot of NFTs that are still today worth thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, because there are people that associate that level of worth to them. But the large majority of people that were buying NFTs back in 2021 for purely financial reasons, they didn't really care about the art or the membership or the utility or any of the things that really come along with provably owning something digitally. I think for a lot of those people, a lot of those projects, they've seen, of course, the prices deflate. They've seen not being able to maintain the same level of value with a lot of those assets. And I think that brings us now to a much more interesting time for NFTs where we are able to really focus in on what was the value of these things in the first place and how do they provide utility, whether that be in gaming or by tokenizing real world assets or by, allowing people to have provable digital identity, or even just for being able to collect things and being able to really take ownership over digital art.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about this because you talked about the financial use case and how that's tended to people would buy them for financial speculation, and then when the prices went down, people essentially may have abandoned NFTs in general. Well, talk to us a little bit about where you see the utility, or like why you still may, and I'll be curious to think, do you still feel like the future is bright for NFTs?
Well, I definitely do. So I'd say first and foremost, the world is getting more digital, not less. And people are caring more and more about their digital identity and what they own in a digital world than they did the year before or the year before that or the year before that. And so I think the premise of being able to prove ownership over a digital asset is still very important. It's very essential to be able to do that in a decentralized, transparent way where it's not sitting on, the servers of some company that, could decide to do different things or go out of business or, shift to, other games or whatever it may be. And so, yes, I do think that the future is very bright for NFT technology. I don't know if we will ever see a world like we did in 2021 where you have, tens, hundreds of millions of people that are buying NFTs purely to gamble and to digitally speculate on their value in the future. I think what we're going to see is more and more people looking at NFT technology for what it really can represent. And that means that, for example, take a Pokemon card. If you have a physical Pokemon card, you can sell that. You can go and, put it up on eBay, and, there's lots of ways that you can transfer a physical card and ship it to somebody. But the other way to look at it is that you can tokenize it. You can trade that tokenized version of that Pokemon card 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times without ever having to physically transfer the asset until somebody decides that they really do want to redeem it. And then you send it once in that particular scenario. And that's a really powerful way that you can take things that maybe people do want to trade because they want to take ownership over it, but they don't want to take physical ownership over that item. You could think about items that are much more difficult to ship or to transfer than a Pokemon card. You could think of it as, plots of land out in the real world or buildings out in the real world, real estate. You could think about it as things that are somewhere in between, taking ownership over vintage cars or otherwise, and being able to tokenize those assets and trade them easily on chain in seconds and transfer the ownership without having to physically transfer the item is quite interesting. There's lots of other use cases for NFTs. I could go into gaming. I could, go into a variety of other markets.
Or even luxury goods, as an example. Like, let's say you buy your wife a Chanel bag, and
Sure.
most people, they see an expensive bag, and somewhere in a lot of people's minds they go, they're looking at you, they're looking at this, they're saying, is that real? So it'd be super easy to verify these things and put it on chain. I think that's one of the biggest complaints most people
100%.
have is if they buy something expensive, they're like, well, how do I know this wasn't bought on Canal Street in New York City?
100%. And so, there's a variety of entire markets and industries that will be built over time on being able to provably own a digital asset. And sometimes you're going to care about the digital asset in its current form. And so, you take video games, for example, imagine you spend 30 hours with a group of your friends, finally defeating, some incredible boss in some video game, and you get this very rare sword out of it. Well, you're really excited about it. You're holding your rare sword in the game, you're showing it off, but a year later, maybe you're not playing that game anymore. Maybe you've moved on to something else. And in the way that the world works right now, that sword sits on the centralized servers of the gaming studio that developed that first game, and you probably never see it again. You get no more utility out of it. But if you have that asset on an open blockchain where you have transparent ownership over it, then maybe there's another game studio that wants to say, hey, all the people that earn that rare sword in this game, we're going to give you this utility in our game. Or maybe that other studio comes and decides to create a new game, but now there's ways that you can trade those items to other people outside of them needing to build their own marketplace function or features. And so there's a lot of power that comes in a world that is getting more and more digital, of being able to allow people to take real ownership over digital assets and then associate benefits or utility or value to them. And so, look back all the way to your original question, is the future bright for NFTs? Absolutely it is. And just because we had a moment where lots of people were gambling and speculating on the future value of these things for no other reason than they hoped that other people maybe would want the thing that they bought for reasons that they, maybe couldn't articulate. Now we're getting to the point where it's like, all right, but this technology is very powerful in its own right. And the world is getting more digital, and people are caring more about what they own digitally and their identity and their reputation digitally. And NFTs have a real role to play there. And I think that that's really important for what we focus on at OpenSea, which is that there's a variety of ways that people are going to interact and trade culture on chain. NFTs being one of them, major crypto being another, meme coins being another, perps on Hyperliquid being another. There's probably a dozen more that we haven't even come up with yet. And it's really important for us that OpenSea is viewed as the home and the hub for anybody that cares about really trading culture on chain.
Yeah, and I'm not making any prediction here, but just because something surged in the past doesn't mean it can't have a resurgence. I remember calling my parents in 2015 and said, "Mom and Dad, I'm going to be a software engineer," and they're like, "Wait," because they saw the crash in the late 90s of the internet companies, and they thought I was crazy. So people, even though software engineering might not look like the best job right now, it still had like a 10-year run of greatness. So you never know. Let's talk a little bit about the pivot to more of the everything store, because somebody might be listening to this, be like, okay, well, I mean, NFTs sound great, but why now perps? Why now meme coins? Why integrate this one-stop shop for crypto users?
I think what it comes down to it is that, there's actually not a huge difference when you really dig into it between a meme coin or major crypto or an NFT. It's all ways of trading value or trading culture on chain for different use cases. And so I think the way that we really want people to look at OpenSea is, first of all, crypto has historically been very complicated to onboard people into. And so even a year ago, you might be looking at, a dozen different wallets across 24 different blockchains. You'd be bridging between them. You'd be deciding, am I, going to convert my Ethereum into, Solana so that I can then buy a meme coin on Solana. And then you'd be saying, well, now I want to convert that meme coin into this NFT project that I heard about. And, it just was a mess. It still is a mess in a lot of ways. And so one of the things we're really trying to focus on for OpenSea is to abstract away a lot of that complexity so that we can onboard the next set of masses into crypto and deliver the value that has always been promised to them, but without a lot of the hurdles and without a lot of the blockers that have made it so challenging for them to do that. And so today on OpenSea, for example, you can trade across 25 different blockchains, and you can easily convert Ethereum into Solana, into wrapped Bitcoin. You can convert that wrapped Bitcoin into NFTs on Base or any number of other chains, and you can do it all seamlessly cross-chain with a single wallet or set of wallets. And so now we're going to be releasing OpenSea Mobile. You're going to be able to have all of your wallets. And so you might have, a ledger that you've got your, Bored Ape or your CryptoPunk on. And then you've got a hot wallet on Solana that you're buying meme coins. And you've got another hot wallet that, you've got, maybe MetaMask and you're trading, on EVM or otherwise. And you're going to be able to connect all your wallets together all in one place. You're going to be able to trade across them 25 different chains, regardless of asset type, regardless of chain that you are trading on or what it is that you want to accomplish. You're going to be able to do it all with one click. You're going to be able to see a combined, consolidated portfolio across all of that. And so you're going to see your NFTs across all of these different chains, your meme coins across all these different chains, your major crypto across all these different chains, all in one interface where you are able to interact and abstract away all of that complexity that's actually happening behind the scenes. You won't even have to really worry anymore about what chain your Ethereum is on, for example. And you've got a lot of people that, maybe they're holding ETH on Base and on Mainnet and on Abstract and, any number of other places. And now all of a sudden you're going to log in and you're just going to see that you have this much Ethereum. And no matter what you want to do, no matter what you want to buy, no matter what chain it's on, you're just going to be able to use that to buy the thing that you want in a single click. And that is the experience that we need people to have in order to reduce this complexity and all these barriers and get the next million, 10 million, 100 million people onboarded into blockchain and into crypto. And so I think back to, again, your original question of, why the pivot? I wouldn't call it a pivot. I would call it an expansion and an evolution of how people are going to interact and trade culture on chain. And it's not just going to be meme coins. It's not just going to be NFTs. It's not just going to be major crypto or perps or prediction markets or all of these other things that we're seeing. And there's probably, like I said, a dozen other ways that people are going to interact on chain that we're not even actively talking about right now. But no matter what they are, we want people to think that OpenSea is their hub. That's their home that they go. And when they want to trade on chain, that's where they go to do all of it, because OpenSea Mobile is sitting in their pocket. And no matter what it is that they're trying to do, they can do it easily on OpenSea.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, because we're big into consumer crypto here, is just making everything so easy. So we talked about the different chains, like that you could have Tether on 14 different chains and not really ever truly know your one unified balance has been maddening for years. But also the idea of like, hey, I help a lot of mobile apps grow, and it's most companies in crypto still don't have Apple Pay. Except for maybe Pump and FOMO come to mind. It's like, man, that's such an easy lift to get people into crypto. So talk to us a little bit about how like you guys are making it a bit easier. Like, do they even need to have a wallet to sign up, or can they sign in with their email? Like, what's kind of the flow you guys are?
I'm so excited to talk about this. And there are a few hundred people that are testing the early versions of OpenSea Mobile. You might see them posting on the timeline over the last couple of weeks. I'm really genuinely excited about all the reactions that we're getting. Most people, the way that they react to this app when they try it for the first time is like, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for years. I didn't know it until I just started using it, but this is what crypto should feel like. And so to your point, when you sign up for OpenSea Mobile, you're just going to put your email in. It's going to give you a code. Boom. You're going to immediately have an EVM wallet and a Solana wallet created for you. You're then going to be able to connect all your other wallets. And so if you want to connect your MetaMask or your Phantom or anything else, then you can do that directly in app. It also links and mirrors directly to the OpenSea desktop experience seamlessly. And so if you have 9 different wallets that are connected on desktop on OpenSea, you're going to be able to scan a single QR code and boom, all 9 of those wallets now are showing up inside of the mobile app. One consolidated portfolio, all of the complexity abstracted away. You're going to have unified balances. So you're going to be able to see if you own Ethereum on 9 different chains, it's just going to show Ethereum. You want to double click into it. It'll say, oh yeah, you have $1,000 on mainnet and $900 on base and $600 on abstract. And you'll be able to move those balances around. But for the average person that just wants to see a unified balance and then be able to use it, that's the only experience they're going to have. If you want to add crypto, you're going to be able to double click Apple Pay, and you're going to be able to do that with your credit card or your bank account. If you want to be able to cross-chain swap, you're going to be able to do that seamlessly and do it in a way where, again, we've abstracted the complexity away from the user experience. And so if you want to buy an NFT on Base, you're just going to buy the NFT on base with your total balance. And you don't have to worry about whether that balance is on base or anywhere else. We're going to do all of that behind the scenes. And all you're going to see is I have a balance. I wanted to buy this piece of art on base. Boom, done. It's in my wallet. And eventually you won't even have to worry that it was on base in the first place. It's just going to be a marketplace for everything that you do on chain. And all of that complexity of which wallet do I use, or what currencies do I own, or what blockchain is this on, or what type of asset is this, it all goes away. And now it's just a singular place where you can interact and trade culture on chain.
Well, I gotta say that's very exciting, and I can't wait to use it myself when it gets released because I work so much on these mobile apps, and I see how difficult it can be. Even if we have a viral TikTok video, it's like how difficult it can be sometimes be for someone to convert because they're instantly hit with so much crypto complexity that many of our listeners here will already have it baked into their brain. But most people don't have 3 years of experience in this field to be like, oh yeah, there are a bunch of different chains. They shouldn't know. So talk to us a little bit about growing the pie, because clearly this is going to have huge resonance with people that are actively into crypto, people that are in CT. But a big thing we beat the drum about here is like we need to get more people into crypto. Like it needs to scale to more consumers, kind of grow the pie. How do you feel like we can, or what kind of marketing messages do you feel like will extend past the 10,000 users that are currently on crypto Twitter?
I think it really, in a lot of ways, means that the fact that it is on chain or using crypto also gets abstracted away. And so I think you're going to see applications like video games or other ways that people interact where they won't necessarily realize that they are even using crypto in the first place until all of a sudden they say, oh, well, I guess I am. And I guess that means that I have real ownership over my assets. I think that another big aspect of this is that people have been trying for years to, develop applications. And the fact that they weren't using crypto meant that the onboarding process was just awful. And so, you have to download this like very specific wallet, and you have to go through this like weird KYC process. And then you have to like get your original currency, but you can't actually double click Apple Pay. So you've got to go through this, depositing process. And then it takes a day for it to be bridged over. And like, that's just where you see the funnel go from lots of people that are interested down to a very small number of people that actually make their way to the end experience. And that makes it really hard for companies to continue to thrive and continue to even have the funds to innovate inside of the space. And so I think that what OpenSea wants to do is to provide the platform and the rails to make it extremely easy for anybody within seconds to get access to the right app, to have their wallet set up, to be able to deposit into them, and then to buy a wide array of things that are culturally interesting and exciting and fun. And then to, of course, then be able to integrate that so that all of these other companies that are innovating in the space and creating great experiences can onboard masses into doing so without a lot of the complexity or hurdles that have prevented mass adoption in the past. And look, this is still going to be a bit of a journey. Even OpenSea Mobile is not fully released yet, although we're right on the precipice of that. But I do think that that's going to be a major unlock. And it's going to be a major unlock for OpenSea in the way that we do our marketing, because we have been waiting for this moment. We have been waiting for the moment when our product is finally in a state where we know that if we actually market to the masses, that when they come in, they're going to have a delightful experience and not be turned off by the fact that it just feels more complicated than it should be. Because we need, I think, to the terminology you've been using, this needs to feel like a consumer app, not a crypto app.
Oh, 100%. It's very few people have gone on a website and been like, is this MongoDB or is this Postgres? They've not once asked
Exactly.
about the database underpinning it. And I think that's been a major problem as speaking to a marketer here. We've marketed the tech instead of actually marketing the transformation. I think that's been a massive problem. We're like, hey, look at our shiny tech. And you're like, yeah, that attracts nerds. Nerds are like 1% of the population. I'm a nerd. I could say it. But I know I'm not running around the streets every day buying things. So talk to us a little bit about what could you kind of see as the use cases? Right now, we see prediction markets going insane. You mentioned perps, meme coins. Those are the things that I see the consumers being the most interesting in. I feel like I saw, who was the founder? Maybe it was Hasib, was talking about how non-financial use cases of crypto have essentially not really bared out. What do you think is really going to be the thing that starts to bring more people? Is it just meme coins and predictions, or are we not seeing the full future here?
Yeah, I would say that, look, the things that we're seeing today are the things that we're seeing today. And that's great. And, the world is going to pay more and more attention to prediction markets and use them as a way to, get information and news and, of course, to gamble and speculate. I think that in the future, we are going to see a new type of economy. And it's a creator economy. It's an economy where people get to create things and then own the success of them without needing a lot of the traditional middlemen that maybe they have in the past. And, one of the most direct ways to think about that is, art or music, or, when people are actually creating these things and now have the power of taking ownership over them and distributing them in the way that they see fit, and being able to do that in a way where they don't have to rely on a lot of the, same mechanisms that have existed in the past and actually been quite extractive for creators and artists and people that are out in the world using their talents to drive attention or to create and build amazing things. And so, as I said a few times in this conversation, there are probably a variety of ways that blockchain technology and digital ownership and transparent, open digital ownership will be used that we haven't even really thought of yet, or at least haven't really hit mass market adoption yet. I mentioned RWAs earlier in the call. I think that's a really exciting and interesting way for people to bridge digital and physical and be able to verify, validate, own things without having to physically transfer them, and to be able to then, when they do want to actually take on the physical, be able to have a redemption mechanism. That's something that's been around for a number of years, but has really only started to really take off now, I think, as a lot of the I'd say edges are getting smoothed out. A lot of the experiences are starting to feel a little bit more consumer based in terms of like pack ripping and the like. And the onboarding process is easier because even though today it's still not as easy as it should be in most cases, it is generally easier to convert fiat into crypto than it was a number of years ago. And then to be able to use it in a decentralized way, that'll continue to get easier and easier with Apple Pay and mobile experiences that feel a lot more consumer focused.
Yeah, and a lot of the experiences have been like buying a meme coin on chain or buying an NFT on chain. So they're almost like P2P use cases. But when I think about what I can do with my crypto day to day, I can't just walk down to the shop and spend my USDC. At least I don't believe so here in South Africa. Like, talk to us. Do we see that businesses are starting to apply some of this technology, or do we think that that's coming? I know obviously BlackRock and many of the financial institutions are interested in the tokenization aspect, but are we actually going to be seeing everyday people being able to use crypto in their day to day life?
I mean, I sure as hell hope so. It makes a lot of
Me too.
sense. The fact is that there are a lot of people in the world, you mentioned USDC, that might not have as easy access to the dollar as, I am lucky enough to, have living in the United States. And so people that for a variety of reasons, might not, be able to easily, get credit approval, or they live in places where it's difficult to get to a physical bank or location, and they just don't have the luxury of these intermediaries that, by the way, are taking fees. They're not particularly convenient. You want to wire transfer people money, it's got to go through all these crazy steps. It's a lot easier to be able to just peer to peer send USDC back and forth and have direct access to the dollar. And so yeah, I think stable coins, and especially with a lot of the regulation that we're now finally starting to see around this, which means that look, when there are rules and regulations, then it means that it's easier for companies and people and innovators to actually adopt and to integrate and to use. I think that it makes nothing but sense for people to start integrating stable coins into retail environments and peer-to-peer transactions and the like. And then I think over time we're going to start seeing the same thing for stores of value. I am a big proponent that Bitcoin is a significantly better, more interesting, more viable, secure store of value than bars of physical gold, as an example. And again, much easier to send. It has, verifiable ownership. It has scarcity. It has all the things that you would want out of a global store of value that now finally most countries, companies, people are starting to all now have consensus around. And so I think the future is very bright for crypto in general. I think it's very bright for blockchain technology and the way that we, look at digital ownership and transfer of value in a transparent, open way. And I don't know whether that's all going to happen tomorrow or a year from now or 10 years from now. But I think that as it becomes easier for people to onboard, as it becomes easier for people to interact and do things on chain without all of the complexity that we have all gotten used to as those that have been using it for years, it becomes a lot easier to at least imagine more mass adoption.
Absolutely. Well, give us some of the, I know all timelines are very fungible, but tell us a little bit about some of the timelines you guys have coming up, any major events that people should be abreast of.
Yeah, so we announced that we are going to have a major live event on March 30th. I can't say much more about it other than it's going to be a major moment for OpenSea. We're going to share a lot of things that I think people have been waiting to hear about. I think that after March 30th, people will have a much clearer understanding as to where we are going and what we are trying to accomplish as a company, and that our aspirations are much larger than being the world's largest NFT marketplace. I think that it's important for people to note, and for me to say, even as I say this, that NFTs are always going to be near and dear to our heart at OpenSea. They're always going to be an important component of the foundation as we build out the rest of our business. And I think that OpenSea will hopefully always be the best and largest place to trade NFTs. But we've started taking steps in the direction of really expanding on our definition of what it means to trade culture on chain and evolving where we are going as a company. And on March 30th, I think that's going to become much, much clearer to anybody, whether they've been paying attention or not. And we're really hopeful that people are very excited about our trajectory and where we're headed as a business.
Absolutely. And for people that want to stay abreast of the updates from you and from the company, where should they go follow you guys?
Yeah, you can always follow OpenSea on X. You can follow me on X as well, which is at Hollander Adam or at OpenSea. And of course, we've got other means, social channels, email lists, and the like. But look, most of crypto, at least today, lives on crypto Twitter, and so that's usually the best place to get immediate announcements and information.